welcome to Florida Focus, a college football podcast. My name is Brandon. I'm a lifetime Seminole fan.
And this is Chris and Jarad, and we are lifetime Gator fans.
And we are putting aside our differences as rivals to bring you the fantastic world of college football throughout the Sunshine State. And the season is just upon us, gentlemen, so today we're going to take an in-depth look into the 2023 season for the Seminoles, for the Gators, and a little bit of UCF in Miami. So how are we feeling so far?
Obviously the season's right around the corner, so we are excited just to have some college football. But as a Gator fan, we're really excited, but also super confused because we don't know how this season is going to shape out.
That's fair.
I just don't know. We were talking before we recorded, and there's just no telling what this team is going to bring. You could spin it either way, and you could sell me almost on any record. But we're going to try to figure that out tonight.
Yeah, just to echo that, I'm not an anxious person, right? Like, I don't really know what the emotion of anxiety is. But I will tell you this, if it is existing, and I do know it, 72 hours here before kickoff, I'm probably more anxious or have more of a feeling of anxiety than I ever had in my lifetime, right? Because I just do not. So very excited, ready to kick this thing off. It was great to have college football on, right? Great to have college football on last weekend. Watch some of those games, but definitely here before we get into the week one, which is really week two. We're definitely in full go mode.
Yes, indeed. And so along those lines, I think the best way for us to get things started is to start off with the Florida Gators, and we're going to run through the entire schedule and each give our feedback week to week. So take it away, Chris, the Florida Gators 2023.
Yeah, so we go to Utah because they came to the Swamp last year. So we're starting the year at Utah at a Thursday night game. And I think they're ranked, 14th in most polls, somewhere around there. Pretty good team. Cam Rising's coming back. A lot of question on his health because he tore his ACL at the end of last year. As of now, he is on the depth chart there, along with a couple other guys that are dinged up. How effective will he be? That's a huge question mark. Will he actually play? Huge question mark. Their backup quarterback is out for the year, so it's either a recovering Cam Rising or your third-string quarterback. So you'd think that helps the Gators. But the Gators do have to travel. They have to go out there. We have a new quarterback ourselves in Graham Mertz, which, honestly, I've made this public. I'm not really high on him, but after the spring practices and fall practices, a lot of buzz around him, separating himself from the other quarterbacks and kind of taking command of the offense and showing that he is an experienced quarterback. So we go out there, and this is year two for Billy, and a lot of people are saying it's already a make or break year for him. So this is a huge, important game for the Gators. I'm really excited to see. I believe our defense is going to be improved, but can they? It's a tough one to show that you're improved on the road at a ranked team there. And I'm looking to see if we know the running back room is pretty solid. If any receivers, and we have a bunch of young receivers coming up, them and Pearsall can help Graham Mertz in the running game. And that offensive line, we know that it's in the new offensive line. The health is a big question mark for them. Can they handle the pressure? Can they handle traveling out to Utah? And just a side note, that right now as we're recording, a hurricane's coming, and that's another wrinkle to this is that they changed up the flight plans. Florida now is going to fly out on Tuesday, stay the night in Dallas, then on Wednesday fly out to Utah, and then the next day play a game with that altitude. So how's that going to affect them, right? So I really have no idea. And even if we lose this game, I'll still have no idea. Even if we win this game, I really don't know how I feel. Because last year you saw the Utah game, phenomenal game in the Swamp, electric crowd. Anthony Richardson has a Heisman performance, and everything's just high on the Gators, but that didn't mean anything the rest of the season. So it's just I'm excited it's here, but so many question marks going into it.
Yeah, and I would just echo that same question mark. Obviously with Utah, Cam Rising, they have Bryson Barnes, backup quarterback there. Obviously he's not Cam Rising, and you also have Nate Johnson, who's a phenomenal athlete. A guy that I think has ran like 4.3, 40 before, really fast. So maybe some mixing with both of those, depending on what Rising's health situation is. Obviously Whittingham's keeping this thing super close to the vest from everything that is online and that you're reading. Not going to announce a starter, not going to tell you anything about him. And obviously with Keithy, their all-world tight end, who's a phenomenal player, obviously kind of in some question there too. So, question marks all around for the Utah game, but it should be, like Chris said, a much improved defense, much improved secondary front seven, and it should be a heavyweight fight in Salt Lake City.
Yeah. As far as a prediction, we'll just go week by week. It's a tough one. I mean, I'm going to say that a lot for this schedule, just heads up. Against everything in me. Jarad, I'm a huge pessimist when it comes to the Gators. I'm going to go against everything, against my gut, my soul, and just say the Gators pull this one out. I don't know how. I don't know why. I know that I don't really believe in jinxing our team, but I actually kind of do a lot believe in jinxing our team. And this might be jinxing our team. I don't know. But maybe I'm buying into the buzz from camp. But I'm going to say the Gators pull this one out in Utah and surprise some people.
So,
yeah, I know. I did not expect that from me.
Utah has a phenomenal tailback named Jaquindon Jackson, 6'2", 230 pounds. He's a sledgehammer, right? They have a great offensive line. A true freshman starting at tackle because he's that talented. Kyle Whittingham says it's their best Utah team he's had since he's been the head coach in Salt Lake City. Their defense has great Jalen Glover, their backup tailback, obviously from Lakeland, right, a former Argonaut. He's probably got, some scores to settle there with the Florida Gators. But I'll echo the same thing as Chris had. I love the front seven. I like Austin Armstrong. And I didn't move back to Florida to make, toe the line sort of picks. So I got the Gators 27-20 in Salt Lake City in 72 hours.
So, yeah, I know. This is normally not the way I go at all. I'm like, oh, we're going to lose by 30. Why we've been playing. But I'm just, whatever. It's a new year, new me. Let's just go. Let's go the Gators this time. I really like our defense.
Bring us back down to earth, Brandon. What do you got?
Yeah.
Yeah. So Utah does have some question marks that they've done a decent job of solving. How does their secondary look? They've got a guy who's coming off of 2 years of a mission trip, so maybe he got his head straight. You come in, you bring in a transfer kicker because special teams has been a mess for Utah. It didn't really seem to matter, and to your point, Jarad, Kyle Whittingham has been at Utah 18-plus seasons now. So to say you have a team this good, that's saying a lot. Their schedule just is pretty weak, is the thing. So how do they show up in a game like this? I am going to take Utah to win. I don't feel a lot of confidence in it because it starts and ends with the line of scrimmage, and Florida may have just enough to control something here. And I know that they took a setback with the running back situation, and that's going to be the strength of the team. But if you can actually get something going with the passing game against Utah secondary, I think you do keep it close. But a lot of the travel factors and going on the road, I think I'd take the Utes here, but I think it's in a close game. They win by 4, so I'll take 27-23. So that's a pretty low-scoring game, but that speaks to how good I think Florida's defense comes out.
You guys know what the spread is on the game, just out of curiosity?
So the spread started at 9.5.
Okay.
And it got all the way down to Utah at 4.5, but now the line's back up to 6.5.
Okay.
And I think maybe that's like a signal that maybe Rising plays. I don't know. I mean, obviously, no one knows.
Yeah. Even if he does play, I know his mobility is probably limited, which killed us last year. He is still an experienced quarterback, and he has a great arm. He has 17 tight ends he can throw to. And those tight ends just tore us up last year. Hopefully we're going to learn from that, and I think we do. I think I'm a big fan of Austin Armstrong on the defense to slow him down a little bit. And I think our offensive line is going to hold up. I think Mertz, his 3 years of experience is going to help us get over the line and get a win. But thank you, Brandon, for keeping us grounded.
Like I said, it wouldn't totally surprise me, and I kind of picked. I think I did pick Florida to win last year in the Swamp, which ended up being kind of a classic finish. But yeah, a lot of Utah's games in the last year or two, you're like the big matchups, like against Oregon, you lose against Penn State in the bowl game, but you do beat USC in the title game. What do you think of that? You play close games at Washington State. Maybe being at home is the sole reason why they win this game, just to be honest, because it will be close. And we'll get into the politics of why this kind of game is scheduled, but if you follow us on Twitter, X, whatever it's called, at Florida Focus Pod, you saw some comments in the last couple of weeks about why is a SEC game like this being played? Like, the SEC doesn't need to reach out to this and go on the road and play home and away. They got enough clout as it is. So I'm shocked that, and the fact that it's a non-Saturday game just kind of baffles me. But here we are, and I think it's going to be a close matchup. I'll still take the Utes.
Okay. All right. Let's see. Next game, McNeese at home. I see the Gators winning comfortably. I don't really need to talk too much. I just hope we get to see some backups because we're going to need it. We're going to need the reps, especially the young guys coming in. So Gators by a lot versus McNeese.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised to see McNeese actually get some points on the board here. I know a lot of Gator fans probably don't want to hear that, but you're going to see a lot of guys rotating in and out, much like you did with the USC San Jose State game, right? So San Jose State put a lot of points on the board, but nobody cared. That game was never in doubt. And I think you'll see the same thing in McNeese. You'll see the Gators rotating a lot of young players. Got guys like Kelby Collins will probably get a lot of burn, right? Jakeem Jackson at cornerback. A lot of those players that you hyped up all year during camp. We'll see a lot of those guys. So maybe McNeese gets, some points on the board, but pretty cut and dry what's going to happen here.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to, in that game, seeing guys like Trayon Webb come in. Now that was it Cam Carroll had that, our third string running back, he's out with a knee injury or leg injury. So I want to see the true freshman Webb come get some reps because we're going to need him throughout the rest of the season to give Etienne and Johnson a breather too. So that's the guy I'm really looking forward to see in that game in particular.
Yeah, not too much to add here. Last year it was the Eastern Washington game. This year is McNeese State. Florida probably scores in the high 40s. Because you're trying to rotate in some guys, get some depth. You maybe go up 17-20-ish to McNeese State, but Gators win easily at home.
Okay. All right. Let's see. Going on next is home against Tennessee. And I think this, even if we lose to Utah, this game's going to be rocking. It's a night game already. The atmosphere is going to be crazy because we usually don't lose to Tennessee, and we did last year. And, I mean, you want to see a Gator fan roll their eyes, you just listen to someone talk about how good Tennessee is. And it's frustrating. And they are a good team. I mean, Heupel's really got them going. They are fun to watch. They put up a lot of points. And, I mean, that game last year was a high-scoring game. So I don't know if I'm ready to pull the trigger on the Gators on this one just yet. You know what? Forget it. Yes, Gators are winning this one too. The crowd's going to go crazy. Defense is going to get some turnovers. They won't be able to stop the run game. Gators in a close one, last-second field goal. Whatever.
I try not to be a homer on things like this, and this is probably going to be the most homer pick probably ever by me. Outside of like just intentionally messing with people, right? So I do think that the home field has an advantage, right? Breaking out the All Blues, Tennessee coming to town. Obviously, myself and I think Chris is going to be in attendance there too, so that's going to probably play a huge role in the win. Not really, but but no, I do think that I'm not saying that Tennessee's going to. A lot of people are saying Tennessee takes a step back this year. I don't know that I believe that, right? I think Joe Milton does complete a very high percentage of passes. Tennessee does have some weapons. A few question marks on defense, but they play like a good scheme, right? Their offense kind of takes care of their defense for the most part. They're able to sustain drives. They have a good running game. So I think that for the most part, most fans coming out and saying Florida wins is a kind of a crazy pick. And I'm sure I'm fine with being a little crazy on this one too. It's really going to come down to this Graham Mertz situation that no one knows about, right? So national fans think Graham Mertz is probably just this recycle from Wisconsin kind of trash. Florida fans, maybe a little bit more excitement, especially after Shane Matthews' comments about him. I'll go Florida too in a very close game. I don't know that I'm ready to give a score for that one yet. 27-24, Gators.
All right. I like it.
Very low
All
scoring.
right.
I guess if Florida's
Come on, Debbie Downer. Let's
no,
go.
I was gonna say like if Florida has a chance in all these games, there have to be low scoring like that, and so I get where that number's coming from. The biggest question I have with Tennessee is what exactly are we going to get from Joe Milton? You know, he transfers from Michigan, from Olympia High School in Orlando. This guy you've seen flashes where he could be one of the greatest passers in the game, and then on the other flip side, he could be benched by week 4. He could lose his job. It's really hard to know what you're going to get on offense there. There will be, I think, some setback with Tennessee, but mostly because you're just replacing a lot of defensive guys. And this was a tough one for me to pick. I actually am taking the Florida Gators as well, but there's going to be a lot of cultural things you're probably going to see shift with Tennessee, and that's the reason why I'm going to take the Gators. I think maybe you see some rushing attack there. Maybe this is one of the games where Tennessee inexplicably gives up 63 points like they did to South Carolina. I don't know that it's going to get that high scoring, but the point I'm trying to make is there are games where they just don't show up, where it just makes zero sense on the schedule that they played. And it's going to be tough in the SEC to win 11 games again for Tennessee. So they're going to slip up a couple of times, and I think this may be one of them.
So, Brandon, real quick, I don't want to derail it, but you're a guy who's followed Heupel very closely, especially there at UCF, and you've seen a lot of that. What do you think from year 1 to year 2, having seen that transition before? What do you think that is kind of spells for the Tennessee Volunteers?
So a lot of the culture shifts I'm talking about, like at UCF, year 1 to 2, it's a lot of guys not getting motivated for games. It's Heupel kind of quitting on the recruiting trail a little bit here and there, not willing to change a concept. He actually, I think, does pretty good networking with the ADs and the coaching staff. Just the players seem to be a disconnect with him, and I don't know that he's a long-term success for any program. And I would need to see him be somewhere 4 or 5 seasons before I would believe that. And so this is just kind of where I think the cracks in the foundation start to show.
All right.
Cool. All right, next up for the Gators, another third home game in a row of Charlotte. Again, I think it's going to be much like the McNeese game, maybe a little bit closer because we just played in. I can see a little bit of letdown. A big SEC game, your rival comes in the week before. Can you keep that energy up again? I think it might be harder, so maybe a little bit closer than it should be, but I still think the Gators win comfortably.
Yeah, not much to talk about here. Obviously, should be, right? Hopefully another scrimmage setting for the Florida Gators. Maybe you get some more backup burns, and maybe you see a different quarterback. Maybe Graham Mertz is, if the season has gone out, Chris and I have sort of laid out, and even Brandon with the 1-1 start, you're going to see Graham Mertz has obviously done enough to be consistent. So maybe you start to see some of those guys behind him sort of take some second half reps. But yeah, should be pretty clear cut here. Probably a 40-something to 17 affair.
Yeah, I think top to bottom recruiting, talent, and coaching. Just to be fair to Charlotte, they're probably one of the 8 worst programs in Division I. They're getting settled. They got a lot of changes. They're trying to figure out where they are in the new conference alignments, and they'll make a good effort, but on the road against the Gators, I don't see much here. It may even be a higher scoring game than McNeese State. But yeah, the Gators comfortably probably cover the 38-point spread.
Okay. All right, so then the Gators go on the road to Kentucky. A Mark Stoops team that seemed to have the Gators number lately. 2 in a row, I think, now for them. And I still feel like we've had better teams both those games, but they just played better, and that defense is really has really stopped our offense the last 4 or 5 years, really. So can we handle a true SEC road test after something like Utah and Tennessee at home? Now we have to go to Kentucky. They've had our number. I still think we're the more talented team. I think we've been out recruiting them last couple of years. But here's where pessimistic Chris comes back into play. They have our number, and we're going there. We're probably 4-0. If I'm right, if Jared's right, we're 4-0 at this time. I think they have some pretty easy games prior to us, so I think it's gonna be a nice matchup. I think we lose on a fluke play, fumble, special teams. I want to go Kentucky on this one in the upset. I don't want to say it, but I've been too positive so far, so I got to bring myself down here and say that we lose Kentucky on the road.
Yeah, I got to start going first in some of these picks here. It sounds like I'm mirroring you, but I think Mark Stoops has done a really good job of just bringing in a really tough physical team year in and year out. His offensive, defensive line of scrimmage may not have the biggest names, but they play really, really, a tough brand of football, and it's shown throughout the years. So obviously you're going to replace Will Levis, who I didn't think was that good anyway. NC State transfer Devin Leary coming in, so a battle of the transfer quarterbacks, right? NC State versus Wisconsin here, and Leary versus Mertz. I think it's just one of those games, that Billy Napier is obviously not arrived in year two. And I don't know what arrived looks like for him, but obviously, I don't think this is a year where Florida comes out and shocks the world. And I think that Kentucky is just a really well-balanced, good coach football team, and maybe has a Gators number in a low-scoring game, and does just enough there to get a W on the road or at home for Kentucky.
Ugh. Yeah. I was hoping you would tell me that I'm wrong, but
well, to be a three-peat here, this was actually the most comfortable pick I had so far in the schedule, was to say Kentucky would win this one. It's wild to think 5 seasons ago we would ever be saying something like this, where Kentucky would have the streak over the Gators. But Kentucky returns an insane amount of starts from their previous years on offense, including all but one position on the offensive line. But the one that's not returning is a senior. So some questions on defense for Kentucky. They've shown that they are a solid 7-8 win program, and they can actually challenge everybody else except for maybe Georgia/Tennessee, whoever's on top in the East. And so I'll take Kentucky by 10 in this one.
So it looks like we're losing to Kentucky. Great. All right, so I'll go first for Vanderbilt, but then Jared, if you want, you can go first for the second half. So we return home to Vanderbilt, homecoming game for us. It's weird to say this, but this is a revenge game, just like Kentucky. It's a revenge game. We got shocked last year. On the road to Vanderbilt after beating A&M and South Carolina pretty handily. You go on the road and just lay an egg against Vanderbilt. I know there's a lot of other stuff outside of football that was going on, but inexcusable nonetheless. But Vanderbilt team that looked pretty decent. It was a Hawaii, but still pretty good. Their opening game, pretty fun to watch. But I think Florida gets it together in this game, regroups, and gets the W against Vanderbilt. Maybe by like 10, maybe uncomfortably, but I think Florida bounces back in many ways against Vanderbilt.
Yeah, I like Vanderbilt. I like the way they're coached, but I don't think that we're starting any Vanderbilt over Florida streaks here this season in year two. I think Shepard and Skinner do a great job at wide receiver for them. Obviously, A.J. Swan, their quarterback, stepping in last year after Northern Illinois kind of taking over in the helm there. And obviously, they look pretty decent against Hawaii. So obviously, that's going to be a fun team to watch. But no, I like Florida here. And I would probably say 31-20.
Yeah, that's about right.
Yeah, I think Vanderbilt's just going to be happy to play in a complete football stadium versus what they have now, which doesn't even have an end zone, and they're still in construction with a hanging scoreboard. But yeah, you know what Vanderbilt is at this point. They're a 4 or 5 win team, which is, it really did shock everybody to see Vanderbilt win against Florida, because I still don't think after that game you think Vanderbilt's a better team. But so they do a decent job, but I don't think it's enough. And Florida by 14.
Okay. All right, Jared, tell us about South Carolina.
Yeah, man. So Spencer Rattler coming back, getting a lot of preseason hype there. Beamer, another guy in the SEC who I think has done a really good job, like Mark Stoops, and sort of like bringing in a new culture, kind of fixing some issues with like day-to-day operations. Right, that's a tough team. They're good up front. They have a pretty good front seven. Obviously, took a hit in the transfer portal. Lost Jaheim Bell over there, so he's at FSU now. That was a pretty. He didn't do anything last year against Florida, but he was a good weapon for them, throughout the year. And obviously Rattler, a lot of preseason hype. I do think Florida takes another loss here to the Gamecocks. Again, it's not that I feel like that South Carolina is so much of a better team or maybe even better personnel, but Beamer obviously, has been there. He's a little established now, and I just think he's done a good job. And I think he has that team kind of going in the right direction. I think they have a good front seven. They have some good defensive ends over there, and I just think that. Obviously, we just haven't arrived yet, right? So we're still gonna have to deal with some of these sort of tough losses here in year two, and I don't think that's going to surprise anybody, right? A 7-5 season would be 2 games, ahead of what Vegas has us at 5.5. So somebody's going to take some losses. Unfortunately, I think against South Carolina will be us.
Yeah. What a huge thing South Carolina had with Rattler coming back, especially after the momentum they gained the last few games of the year, and that Tennessee game was electric. And yeah, like Jared said, I mean, Beamer's just a step ahead of us as far as where he's at as a coach, and I really see this game getting out of hand for the Gators. I really can see it's probably our luck will be a night game, because it will be a night game. That place can at times be rocking. And I just think that we're just gonna. I don't know if we're at the team that can handle that crowd yet. And especially, I mean, if you look ahead, Georgia's coming up. I mean, although we have a bye after South Carolina. I don't know if Mertz and them can handle that crowd just yet on the road. So I say South Carolina's gonna roll us. And I don't like saying that, but I just could see that's the one game where it's like. Maybe we're even talent-wise, but as a program, they're ahead of us, and it's on the road. I can really see them putting it on us.
Yeah, I'm going to take South Carolina to win. Just a quick comment about the Gamecocks. I am impressed that the schedule and the coaching decision has really panned out for them. I mean, it would be easy for a program at South Carolina to just disappear with you've got Georgia every year, you got Clemson every year. This year they're playing North Carolina. And, the whole slate of games you have. And there was a recent article about Virginia Tech, not to get too off topic, but, this is the son of Frank Beamer we're talking about, the Hokie legend. He never even wanted to, stay at Virginia Tech or even the ACC. He wanted to take a job like this. And, it's only, third year for him, so he's kind of early on. But, impressive start to how he's got everything going, getting Spencer Rattler to come over and make a difference. I would take South Carolina probably by 14 in this one. But, kudos to them to keep a program going in the East.
All right. So we move from South Carolina. And Jared, let us know about the 2-time defending champs, Georgia Bulldogs, and our matchup with them.
Not much to say about the Georgia Bulldogs that hasn't already been said. They're kind of the class of college football right now. They're great at every position. They're deep at every position, running back, offensive line, wide receiver, defensive line, front seven, linebackers, safeties, corners, everywhere you go. These guys have dudes just suiting up for them in the 2 deep, sometimes even in the 3. So a lot of Georgia's backups on defense could start at most SEC programs, right? This is just a very well coached, very well oiled machine. They will, a lot of people are saying they might take a step back here, moving on from Stetson Bennett. And obviously Carson Beck stepping in there, kind of in a little bit of a surprise decision to me. Georgia's recruited really well at quarterback. Maybe obviously with Stetson Bennett coming in and maybe not the most heralded name, they've recruited very well. They have a couple 5-stars just chilling here now. But we're going to go with Carson Beck. So obviously they think they have something there with Mike Bobo. And he likes what he has at quarterback with Beck. And so, this is going to be a pretty ugly game. I think the Gators are obviously approved, and I think they're making strides to do some things. Obviously, number 3 recruiting class in the country this year, and they're starting to bring those guys on the campus, but they're not here yet. And Kirby Smart has them right now. So it's gonna be a big loss, I think. Maybe like a 4-score affair. Georgia's probably gonna be able to call their score in every game, but maybe against Alabama in the SEC title game.
Yeah, I mean, you kind of hit the nail on the head there. It's not going to be laughable. I think. I guess the only thing is, to look for is, can we close the gap at all? I'm not saying we're going to have to. I'm not looking for or expecting like a late fourth quarter tight game, but just do we look like we're closing the gap on them on the field at all? Because we're slowly, I mean, ever so slowly, inching with in recruiting against them, but we're not there on the field. And in the last few years, it showed. And we've had a couple of games recently where we kind of kept it interesting in the third quarter, maybe going into the fourth, but by the end of the game, it's still like a 3-touchdown win by them. Can we just make it interesting the whole game? Do we look better? Are we not just blowing coverages against them? Are we not just letting their running back run up the gut against us? Not just letting them force a bunch of turnovers versus like I just want to see, are we improving and closing the gap at all against them? That's the only thing I'm looking for. But as far as the outcome of the game, no, we're not winning that one.
Everything you guys said already. I mean, it's tough when you're at a height that Georgia is to keep the talent you have with you. Jermaine Johnson is a perfect example of that. He was riding the bench for Georgia. The next year he comes to Florida State, one of the best seasons in school history, and wins ACC Defensive Player of the Year. So, yeah, you're going to face that top to bottom with Georgia. There just really seems to be no weaknesses. Do they beat themselves at one point is the only question, but I don't think so in Jacksonville.
Yeah. I think Jarad alluded to it. Their schedule is so easy, and this is not me being a hater on them. Like, it's just an easy schedule. Yeah. What stinks is we're one of those teams on there, and we're an easy schedule, easy team for them. I mean, it's sad, but that's where we're at right now. All right, so moving along, Jarad, let us know about Arkansas and the home game we have against them.
Yeah, man, I'm a big Sam Pittman guy. I think he does really well. His teams are so fun to watch. His offensive lines are really physical. And then if you've ever been to Fayetteville there in Arkansas, it's a great place. Obviously, they got to come to the Swamp. I like KJ Jefferson. I think he's a really fun guy to watch. I think he's a really good quarterback. But I think the Gators get one back here at home. And in the black jerseys, getting a W here at home in the Swamp. So I think the Gators do win a really close game, a really physical game with Arkansas. Right? Can't lose them all. Well, I guess you can't lose them all, but they won't. And so I got the Gators over Arkansas 28-21.
Okay. Man, I it's like you said, it's an all black game. The Gators are going all black. I mean, from helmet to pants. I know that the blackout people, and I pray that it's not a noon game. even it's early November in Florida, it's still going to be hot. I pray it's a night game. It just makes sense. But so hopefully ESPN, SEC Network, whoever's listening, make that a night game. But Jefferson is a great quarterback. He is very fun to watch. I think it's going to be fun though. I mean, we're probably coming off of back-to-back losses, and I think back-to-back embarrassing losses. So this one is a huge must-win game, not just for the season, but just probably for Napier to get the fans back on board. It's going to be a close one. I'm going back and forth on it. I think because of the uniforms, because of we won another win, it's in the Swamp, I think the Gators pull this one out. And Arkansas just traditionally, usually the last 2-3 years, starts off pretty good, but kind of fizzles out towards the end of the season. We catch them in that time. So I'm going to say Gators in a close one, maybe 3-4 points.
Yeah, I've always liked Arkansas. They've been sneaky good over the past couple of years. I didn't think Sam Pittman would work out, but I think I have to lean toward Jarad saying like that he is good. He's kind of proved himself. He's just in a terribly hard conference, and this year they have BYU, and they've got at Florida, Auburn. I mean, just a pretty decently tough schedule. But I do like the Gators at home. I'm not trying to feed off of you guys too much, but they seem to be only good in pieces on their team, like maybe good at quarterback, but not much good in the backfield. Maybe good on defense in some spots, but enough that you can leak out and get probably a lot of pressure on their defensive line. So, yes, the back-to-back losses will probably feed into that. You will probably a little bit harder, take a step or two before the snap to get to the quarterback in this one. But I'll take actually Florida pretty big in this one. I'll take them by 17. I think they bounce back pretty good.
Oh, okay. I like that. I hope you're right. I like that. All right, so Jared, let's know about the Gators' next game at LSU.
Yeah, man, Baton Rouge, obviously Death Valley, the real Death Valley, a tough place to play there down in Louisiana. As somebody who's lived down there, I can tell you that that fan base has ever been as fanatical as our own. Great fan base, great atmosphere, and they got a great team. And so one thing that Brian Kelly has really done is kind of turn that around. And not that they were ever necessarily in a bad direction, but like he's really brought in some discipline there, really brought in some talent, like guys like Harold Perkins at linebacker, who's going to be surefire All-American. He's a phenomenal player. Mason Smith obviously should be back by then, obviously serving that one-game suspension against Florida State. One of the best defensive tackles in the country in the middle there for them. And then everybody knows what they can bring to you on offense. Talented at every position. A little bit of a question, maybe with replacing guys like Butte on the outside, but they have another guy that's just as good and maybe even higher ceiling there on the outside. So I do think obviously LSU gets the win at home. As much as I hate to say it, because I really don't like LSU and I hate to see us lose another one, but that is a very, very talented team and they're very well coached. So. I do like LSU here, probably about 10 points.
Okay. I would say LSU by more than 10. I'm not high on this game at all. They've had I don't know, 18? 2018 is the last time we beat them. And they just had our number in some exciting games, some crazy games, but they all come up in LSU's favor, and now we're going on the road. There's a lot of hype surrounding that team going into this season, and I get it. Pretty good quarterback and experienced coach in Kelly. But yeah, I really don't see Florida walking in there and coming out with a victory. Can they just keep it respectable? That's kind of I would 10. I would take 10, but I don't think it's going to be 10. I think it's going to be a lot more than that.
I agree, LSU big. The only question I have is LSU does tend to lose some questionable games late in the season, and this one tends to be later in the year. So like they've lost against A&M, they've lost against Arkansas before. Is that where they slip up? I don't think so here, but if Florida for some reason catches them napping, if they come in pretty hot, who knows? They may keep it close.
All right, so 2 more games left. Jared, are we going to have some difference in our picks? We'll see here. Tell us about our road game against Missouri.
Yeah, I think this is a huge win on the road for Billy Napier and the Florida Gators. Obviously, Drinkwitz, another guy who, all these coaches in the SEC, this is a really talented league in terms of head coaches, right? And you've seen that throughout. The Big 12 is another team who has really deep coaching staffs. Obviously, the Big 10 with some big names there too. But the SEC has really been really good on some of these hires, right? So Drinkwitz, obviously another guy. I'm not a personal fan, but I'm not going to knock the job he's done when people said he couldn't, and he did. Just was able to land commitment from in-state 5-star defensive end William Nawari. So doing a pretty good job on the trail too. So I do like. Actually, I don't like anything about Missouri, but I will respect the job they do. But no, this is going to be a big win for Florida on the road. With Billy Napier kind of coming into this sort of wrapping up the season, and I think the Gators get them there in Columbia.
Yeah, Missouri's one of those teams where they are mid to lower level on in the SEC for a long time, but yet they'll randomly pull out a 5-star out of nowhere, and it's like, to Missouri, I don't get it. But good for them for doing that. I don't like Drinkwitz either. But I do give him credit. Like Jared said, he is doing a lot better job than I thought he was going to. I think this one is going to be a close one. Because, if you look at Florida's schedule, just at South Carolina, getting up against versus Georgia, then Arkansas, then LSU, and now you're going to have to get up again on the road. Our luck will be a noon game. Can they stay up knowing that Florida State's next, right? So, and knowing that you're going to need some wins to get bowl eligible, I think Florida barely squeaks this one out. I think I just see this one of those games that we could even lose, honestly, just where it fits on the schedule and how I think that the season's going to play out. But I say Florida just barely beats Missouri.
Okay, first time in a while I've disagreed, so here we go. Missouri coming into this game is going to play LSU, Kentucky, South Carolina, Georgia, and Tennessee. Woo. They're going to be hungry for a win because out of that stretch, they may only get one. And I think all of the pieces they lost, a couple guys on defense, but where they replaced some guys I think I like at wide receiver for Missouri, I think where they probably kind of push the game and get enough points to score. I mean, they have a guy on defense named Johnny Walker. How good can that get, So I don't know. I think in Missouri here, and it's going to be late in the season. Missouri's gotten Florida. I'm really big on the history of matchups, as you probably can tell. And Missouri's had them as of late. Not every year. But, give me the Tigers.
Yeah, surprisingly, I think Florida, since Missouri joined the SEC, Florida and Missouri, their records are tied. So this one's, I believe,
how about that?
Make or break for one of us. So, I mean, I kind of wanted to pick Missouri to beat us, but I'm going to go the Gators. But, man, I hope I'm wrong. I hope that we just blow them out. I hope Jared's right on this one. All right, so I know this is kind of a preview for what the FSU schedule too, but let's just go ahead and talk about it now. Gators and Noles, end of the season. Nole team comes into the swamp, highly ranked, at least starting of the season. Jared, how do you think it's going to play out?
Yeah, and this is probably going to be the only time that, so far, I guess, on the schedule that we're going to have probably a disagreement here. But, I've talked to at length to both of you about the Florida State Seminoles. I think Jordan Travis is great. I think Mike Norvell coming in here has done a really good job. He got off to a rocky start. A lot of people doubted him, kind of ride the ship last year, got 10 wins. A little bit of question marks around kind of like the quality of those wins, but you get to 10 and you win games, so can't really take any weight away from that. They have a good running back field. We've mentioned their wide receiver core, right? Keon Coleman coming from Michigan State. Johnny Wilson is phenomenal, like 6'7", catches everything. Well, he actually drops a lot of passes, but he has the ability to go up and get anything over anybody. And then obviously, a little bit of a loss in defensive line, but they've recruited well and through the portal. They've really shored up a lot of those things. So that's a very good team. But just to be different, man, I think the Gators at home get an upset in a 3-point just crazy game.
Okay, interesting. All right, so I said to myself, I might have even said to Jared or Brandon, I was thinking the Florida State and Tennessee game. I was like, Florida's going to win one of those games. I think they're going to win one, lose. Well, I already used that bullet on Tennessee, so. Florida State. It's interesting to see last year what a Florida State team looked like with weapons other than Jordan Travis. When he's not your only offense, what can they do? And they looked pretty good at times there. So I really like, big fan of Johnny Wilson on the outside there, and I like the transfers they've had too. I just think that Norvell's got this program again. Much kind of like South Carolina, to the point where the program is just a couple steps ahead of us. We're going to get there, but they're there. I don't think we're there yet. I think the place is going to go be crazy. I want to say Florida State, though, in a close game at the end against Florida. I don't like saying that. But I can't be too optimistic on this podcast. I got to be true to myself and say that the Gators lose this one.
Well, as a Nole fan, I think this game should worry you. There's a lot of things that Florida's going to have righted by then. Probably figured out some passing, some attack to supplement the run. Swamp is a crazy place to play. The Noles complete conference play 2 weeks before this. How does that factor in? Are they looking ahead to a conference title game against Clemson? How does it affect their motivation? I mean, you come off of playing Miami, North Alabama, so should be in a good headspace. Should have all you guys ready to go. But not easy to play there. You struggled at home against this team last season. Now, Florida's going to be slightly different, obviously, as under the second year. You're going to have replaced some pieces and probably gotten better in the season, and certainly a harder schedule than us. So I still think top to bottom Florida State has enough recruiting that we should win this game, and I'm going to pick us to. But if it's anything like last year's where it's back and forth, it's probably another high scoring affair. Florida State's defense still hasn't just shown me a lot. Now with Ventrell Cypress and all of our secondary coming on, maybe those busted coverages just don't happen as much, which we're all hoping for, which is why you're trying to plug those holes. But I still think we're susceptible there, and it still worries me that this game could still go in the mid to high 30s, which I think it will. But I will still take the Noles. I think they're the better team here, and I think they do win in the Swamp.
Okay. So finally Jarad and I disagreed on something. There we go. Again, I hope he's right, and I hope I'm wrong. But there we go. There's the Florida Gators schedule. I think I had them at 7-5.
Yeah, surprisingly went 8-4 on this one. Though I haven't said that in any other conversation. It just kind of happened here.
Okay.
Breaking news.
Okay. Well,
I had Florida at 5-7.
Okay. Oh, you had them at 5-7. Okay. Yeah, I mean, so you're like all the other guys on ESPN.
I mean,
they should hire you.
Yeah, well, they got plenty of openings now, apparently. So.
Yeah, true. Very, very true. All right, Brandon, kick us off. Let's talk about them Seminoles.
Well, I mean, it starts off really, really easy. All you have to do is play LSU in Orlando to week 1. But the biggest news coming out this week, Mason Smith does serve that 1-game suspension. And guess what that did to the spread on the game? Nothing. Because you still have an LSU line that's really talented. You still have Wingo. You still have a lot of good coaching. Jaden Daniels can still score and move the ball. And their depth is pretty good. So the question here is, do you see another matchup where it's close? I mean, last season, you caught FSU really late in the game where we got lucky with a turnover, then we turned it back over. What kind of bounces do we get here? Mason Smith, it's kind of interesting that he's not playing. If he was going to be suspended, they should have probably held it closer to the vest and not told anybody, or just said he's still not ready to go. Either way, it just doesn't seem to affect their depth, and I think they still get a lot of pressure on us. What I want to see is, do they turn loose if you're the Florida State offense? Do you let things kind of fly? And, with Jaheim Bell, he's kind of transferred to South Carolina. How much do you use him at tight end? Do you kind of put him in the slot? Do you have a lot of guys that can do that? You want to see, is he the kind of guy that start his 40 to 60 touches this season? Does it start in Orlando? I kind of think you kind of try to use him in some trick plays to start off to get him comfortable. You run the ball a lot with Benson up the middle. You kind of get some things moving forward. This one obviously is really, really tough to pick, and I've been back and forth quite a bit. I'm taking LSU in this one. I know it's tough. It's hard to say, but I think something has changed, and I think the strength and everything that Brian Kelly's learned, he's going to take that and he's going to beat Florida State. Let's remember also he's played Florida State as the Notre Dame head coach too, so he's pretty familiar with not only the school but also Mike Norvell.
Yeah, so not a bad pick. Obviously, you mentioned Mason Smith going out. Where I look at this game, I really look at Johnny Wilson and Keon Coleman versus the LSU secondary, right? So J.K. Chestnut transfers in, cornerback from Ohio State, fractures his leg. Denver Harris transfers in, a cornerback from Texas A&M. He's suspended. So now you're looking at Chestnut to step in there and fill that role at cornerback position, and he's going to be good. He's going to be fine. But I think Florida State has a really good chance to take advantage of a sort of kind of like thrown together LSU secondary. Not saying they're not talented, not saying that those guys aren't good, but I think that Florida State wide receivers are going to have a lot more continuity than what LSU is going to step into that game with. And I think Jordan Travis and Jaden Daniels is going to be the premier quarterback matchup of week 1. Should be really exciting. So I'm looking forward to that. But I think Florida State does just enough here to take advantage of that LSU secondary, kind of put them in some bad situations and get a W there in the home state in Orlando.
Yeah, I mean, last year's game was so fun to watch. I mean, probably not for you, Brandon, until the very, very end. I know this guy got real nervous, but as just a guy who didn't like both teams, it was just real fun to watch. And a lot of people are like, will that happen again? I think so. I think this is setting up to be a last-minute maybe even overtime game. I think it's going to be. I think these guys are so their talent level is so close to each other. You got experienced coaches there. Jarad hit a nail on the head there. The quarterback matchup alone is worth watching. I don't like what's happening off the field at LSU. The bad timing with the injuries and the suspension. I think that bodes really bad for them, honestly, the momentum going into this game. So I think something like that, and then it being in Orlando, I think FSU, again, it's going to be some kind of thrilling win, gets the victory against the Tigers.
If I was a weaker man, I would change my pick based on what y'all said, but I'm going to stick with mine. Also, Orlando, Florida State's never lost in this city, so
okay,
it would be a first if they did.
Yeah, I think the Noles pull it out.
Okay. All right, so next game, September 9th, Florida State will host Southern Miss, and the Golden Eagles, we actually played this team not too long ago, so the 2017 season in a bowl game. Not that that matters too much here. Southern Miss is pretty decent, handling things down in the South. They have a pretty decent squad compared to what they play and what they're doing recruiting. But just a few days after you played LSU, you're going to want to rest some guys up and not get caught in a trap. This one probably will be lower scoring than people think. We've done this short week before, and we've actually underwhelmed. So if you probably want to pick an under here. You want to try and get a comfortable lead in the second and third quarter and try and get those guys out as soon as possible, given who's coming up next. But I think Florida State still does take care of business. I'll take them 34-20.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a little bit bigger than that. Just given, obviously, you mentioned the short week turnaround, always kind of tough, especially in college football. But Florida State's just really way too talented, in my opinion. Even, maybe stepping in and getting some more of those birds, maybe like that scrimmage like feel we talked about in those early games with Florida. But, I really think that Florida State's able to get some guys some reps, comes out pretty comfortably in a win here.
Yeah, I could see FSU coming out flat a little bit. Just a slightly shorter week, and you got hyped up earlier for LSU. I can see them coming out flat, but I mean they're not gonna mess around too much with Southern Miss. I think FSU big in this.
Okay. Next week, Florida State travels to Boston College. We already know this is a 12 noon matchup. So the Eagles are kind of an interesting squad. Something I was hearing from some media this week is that there are two schools in the ACC that can kind of become what they've called an energy vortex. Those two schools are Wake Forest and Boston College. What they meant by that is the schools are so underwhelming with their attendance that the fans and the students go there and they don't know what to expect, and it kind of throws them off. So that's why you see every once in a while these teams actually win at Boston College or Wake Forest, because they go in and they're like, oh my goodness, Wake Forest's enrollment's 5,000. Nobody goes to Boston College games, and so it can throw them off. That's really the only way Boston College has an edge here. They've lost Jurkovic. He transferred to Pitt. You do have a couple of good things that Jeff Hapley is doing, putting some pieces together. Boston College, probably in your bottom 2 or 3 in the conference of this year. Hapley does have some work to do, otherwise the hot seat is going to get hotter this season. Clearly top to bottom, Florida State's probably a 20-23 point favorite in this one, so I'll take the Noles comfortably.
Yeah, you talk about the highly anticipated running back matchup between Trey Benson and obviously Patrick Garwell III there at Boston College and Alex Broom. No, I'm just messing around with all that. Those are running backs. Those are Boston College running backs, but no, Florida State rolls here. And I wouldn't be surprised if it was by 3 touchdowns.
Yeah, I could see a couple. I think Florida State wins, and I think they win comfortably. A couple things I could see that would make you sweat a little bit. I mean, going up to Boston College, it looks like it's a noon game, so that doesn't really bode well. And then you know who's coming up next, right? Is Clemson. So I could see them putzing around for a little bit, but I still think Florida State wins handily by the end of it.
Yep. Okay, all in agreement there. So the big one, September 23rd, Florida State travels to Clemson. And, man, this one's, again, just like LSU, very hard to tell. If you're looking at top to bottom, Clemson has owned Florida State recently. they've had a better program. They've had better success. They beat Florida State in Tallahassee in a game that they started to run away with, and Florida State kind of clawed back to make it respectable. But you've got it on the road. You probably got a night game, although it still hasn't been announced. And this is the year, right? This is the pivot game. This will tell you right here and there probably, is Florida State back for real? Do they have a chance to get back to the ACC title game and regain the conference? I think with a lot of pieces that you have, what you have to be worried about is Clemson's front seven. And I'll let Jarad kind of dive into that a little bit more. But if we cannot get the running game going, this game, we will be stalled. We will be frustrated. And if we cannot get some pressure on the line, it can go, I think it can go downhill. I'm not going to say this is a game where it's going to snowball if that doesn't happen. You have a good wide receivers that can get you back in the game. You have Travis who can run. I don't think there's any part of the playbook that's closed off for this one. This is probably, if you have to consider a must-win in this season and you want to get back to 11 seasons, you got to take this one. Having said all that, this is one of those, again, back and forth. I could almost flip a coin, but maybe a little bit homer of me. I am taking the Noles to win by 3 in Death Valley, so give me the Noles 30-27.
Yeah, and this is where I'm going to pick Florida State's first loss of the season. So full disclosure, I'm a really big Cade Klubnik fan, and I don't know that he's going to be what I think he's going to be or what I thought he was going to be. But ever since following him in recruiting, I've just really thought this is a really talented guy. Now it's his team stepping in for DJ full time. And I just think he has a really good – him and Will Shipley should form a really good kind of fun team to watch there. And you mentioned their defensive line. I really do like what Clemson has done at the defensive line. And I really think that they're going to have some horses in the front seven, like you mentioned, to cause some problems there for Florida State. If it wasn't I guess if the game was played somewhere else, I would probably pick it differently. But just the fact that it is where it is, Florida State's probably going to be riding high, in my opinion, right? After obviously the big win at LSU and then getting some reps there. I think Clemson hands them their first loss of the year here. And I think it's close though, right? So I think I would probably say like a 34-31 type of game.
Yeah. For FSU, I don't know how many years now, Clemson has been the game for them. You got Florida on your schedule, a rival, Miami on your schedule, a rival. You even got LSU on your schedule. But this is the game for them. And this is just the big measurement of are we back? Are we there? Well, you have to beat Clemson to say that you're back. And what a better place to beat them on the road with momentum and talent that you have. I don't know if that's going to happen though. That's a tough place to play. Like you said, it's probably going to be a night game. Dabo knows what he's doing. I really like Shipley. He is so fun to watch in the backfield there. I think he's going to be a little bit too much for them. I think it might be. I guess it'll be a closer game than you guys are maybe saying it's going to be. But I think Clemson and their crowd is going to make the difference. So Clemson by 10 against the Noles.
Okay. Honestly, this is probably weird to say. Out of the LSU Clemson game, if somebody said you can split them and it doesn't matter who you beat, I'd take it right now. As long as I win one of those personally, I'd take it.
Well, yeah, absolutely. You have to if you're an old fan. It's in conference and it's a little bit later in the season. And that's crazy to say because LSU is ranked 5th. But yeah. Clemson's the one you want to win.
Yep. Okay. So after Florida State goes to Clemson, then they play Virginia Tech.
So I have no faith in Virginia Tech football, really football in the state of Virginia. I just think, and honestly, I think it's a travesty, right? Because when you look at the state of Virginia and you look at the DMV and you look at all the talent that comes from that area, and then you see schools like Virginia and Virginia Tech and just the struggle of what is collegiate football in the state of Virginia. It's really I would say disheartening, sad. The state of college football in the state of Virginia is very sad. So I really just don't think this is any sort of a contest, as much as I hate to say it. Virginia Tech carries a lot of tradition, but really, what is that tradition really founded on, right? A few good seasons under a quote-unquote legendary coach, I guess. But no, this isn't anything to – obviously watch, tune in, check it out. For all the no fans out out there. Watch Jordan Travis sort of kind of continue his Heisman campaign in a game where he should put up really big numbers. I just think Virginia Tech's overmatched. I think Florida State's too good. They're better coached, and I don't see this one being a contest really at all. I could honestly see this being like a 41 to like 17-20 type of game.
Yeah, I would say that I feel bad for Virginia Tech because where in the schedule they play Florida State. They have to go to Florida State after they play Clemson, which we all think they're going to lose to Clemson. So, yeah, I feel real bad for them because I think Florida State's going to take it out, all their frustrations out on Virginia Tech that day.
Yeah, I can see that. Virginia Tech's trying to get some things right with Pry, their new coach, but the article I mentioned in the last episode, but with the problems they had with Fuente and everything, it puts an exclamation point to exactly what Jarad said is the recruiting. The high school that Michael Vick went to, they didn't even recruit there for like 5 seasons. No one even knew like any coaches if you went to that high school. That's just sad. And Florida State's had their way with recruiting that area of the country for a long time in the ACC and had a lot of success. So yeah, Florida State big. Vodtech's had a lot of things to do, and they may only win 4-5 games at the most this season, but it won't be this one.
Yeah.
Okay, so Florida State stays at home the following week to play Syracuse. We'll start with you, Chris. What are your thoughts against the Orange?
Much the same. I think it's just gonna. I mean, this is like a 3-game stretch where I think just FSU rolls right in the middle of it. I don't have much other than Florida State big. I mean, Virginia Tech, Syracuse, Duke. I mean, you just check in with me. It's gonna be Florida State big.
Okay.
I think Syracuse has named Schrader their quarterback, Grant Schrader, coming into there. And it will be a football game. A football game will be played. But I just don't think, and no knock on Syracuse, right? I mean, I think that Syracuse in the past few years, I mean, they've had some like surprising good competitive teams, and they've been, like a fun team to watch. They've had some talent come out of there. I just don't think that this is their game right here in their week. And obviously a team that will probably, struggle for the majority of their schedule. This is just going to be another one of those games for them, unfortunately, if you're a Syracuse Orange fan. So yeah, no, I like Florida State pretty comfortably here.
Yeah, Syracuse, they're baffling because they started off pretty well in Dino Babers, and then they've fallen off. He still has a losing record as a head coach, despite winning co-ACC Coach of the Year just a few seasons ago. And, to show that Garrett Schrader is taking most of the snaps is probably more telling than you'd think with Syracuse, just because that's probably the way they want to move, and plus he's had some injury problems. But one of our new permanent ACC rivals, which we're going to play every year, Syracuse, not the year. The Syracuse probably go bowling, and that's probably a ceiling on them this year. Otherwise, I don't think Dino even keeps his job. But I'll take Florida State by 17. Next week, Florida State stays at home and plays the Duke Blue Devils. So I'll start this one here. This one is going to be a sneaky game. I'm not going to say there's a chance Florida State is going to slip up and maybe lose this one. Florida State's actually never lost to Duke, and that's probably something Florida State fans probably talk about too much. But Duke's actually given some effort here. They've kind of put some steps forward into like a coaching for the football team. They've made an effort at recruiting. They have some decent quarterback play. I think a lot about Duke we're going to know in week 1 when they start the season against Clemson. I don't know that this is going to be like a totally just walk over them game for the Clemson Tigers. But I don't think Duke's going to win either. But, look for Duke to surprise some people. They may keep this one close for a lot longer than you think. So maybe a single-digit game and Duke covers. But I will take Florida State to win.
Yeah, no, so I'm kind of with you here about Duke football. I like Riley Leonard. I think he's going to get the start there. They have some pretty fun weapons there. I think Duke football is, probably a little bit overlooked. I think they're going to be a pretty competitive team. And they've shown that in the past, right? Duke's been able to put together, and they can show you that, like when they have the right guy in charge, when they have the right culture there, that they can win some football games. And I think this Duke team is going to be pretty decent. Again, I'm probably not going to pick them to win, but I could see them keeping this within one score, 10 points maybe, if ball falls right.
Mm-hmm.
You guys are crazy. They're going to blow them out.
Okay.
I think they're going to blow them out. I think they're going to be rolling, getting some momentum by Tech, Syracuse. They're going to be looking forward to getting back on track so they can meet Clemson in the ACC championship game. I think they at home. I mean, yeah.
Okay.
Florida State all.
I like it. Here we go. So moving on. October 28th, Florida State travels to Wake Forest, and you go to Winston-Salem. You see a team that you've struggled against about I don't know, the last 6, 7, 8 years. Sam Hartman's gone, so this game is a little bit different. We talked about the low attendance there, so that actually can throw off the momentum. I was initially worried about this, as you can go back and listen to our previous episodes, but I've kind of calmed my fears. I feel more comfortable with Florida State to take care of business and get this done. I don't know what to expect from Wake anymore. I don't know that they're going to run the same high-octane offense where they try, and I think one season they actually did run 100 snaps in a game. I don't know if they could do that. They still have the personnel for it. They've lost a lot of guys. And I want to say one of their wide receivers either lost for the season with an injury or I forget the reason why. So that's going to cripple their offense even a little bit more. Never truly been known for a true defensive team, although they've put together a couple good squads here and there. They're kind of a team that goes for speed on the outsides, some lanky guys at corners. So I initially was worried about this one on the road, but I am going to take Florida State to win now. I'll take them by 9.
You know, Wake Forest without Sam Hartman, I just don't know. I mean, I can't. I wouldn't feel comfortable picking them in any sort of bigger matchup there. I think Hartman obviously proved what he was and what he showed. If you watch any of that Notre Dame the Notre Dame game, obviously obviously Notre Dame was far more talented there, but Hartman showed that he is exactly who he is and why he is. And so I just think without that, probably going to be a pretty big win there for FSU. Should be pretty comfortable. You'll be playing backups by the third quarter.
Okay. Yeah. Initially, when the schedule came out, I circled this as a potential loss for Florida State. But, yeah, I mean, and the more I thought about it, you guys are right. Like, Hartman was that team. He was that offense. He was the only threat. So you take him away. It's on the road, and a team that has, for the most part, had FSU's number recently, but I think FSU is just too talented, and they handle their business on the road.
All right. Next matchup, Florida State travels to Pittsburgh. We'll start with Jarad, then Chris.
Yeah, this is another game that I actually think that Pittsburgh is going to be a pretty sort of like the Duke pick, right? I think Pittsburgh is going to be able to kind of be a little bit competitive there. I don't think they're going to be able to do enough to win the game, but I do think that they're going to play a pretty good brand of football. I think they should be fun to watch. I'm not saying they're going to be a great team by any stretch of the imagination. I just think it's one of those games where, Florida State comes in and Pittsburgh just has a good day for 3 3/4. I think Florida State still gets a pretty comfortable win there, but I think that maybe that one's sort of entertaining to watch for a few hours.
Hey, Jarad, not so fast, my friend. I think Pittsburgh stuns FSU. It's a place they don't go into very often. And I for some reason, for the last 7, 8 years, I thought Kenny Pickett is their quarterback, and I still think he's their quarterback this year. Sources say that's not true, but I still going with Pittsburgh to upset Florida State. All the good teams, they always have that one game that they either mess around and win by, squeak by, or mess around and lose. And I think this is the one that FSU loses that they shouldn't lose on the road at Pittsburgh. Mark it down.
So we're split so far. Go ahead, Jarad.
No, I'm just saying that surprised me. I didn't anticipate Chris coming out with that. So
RKO out of nowhere.
You're gonna have to bring some order back to this forum here, man.
I'm sorry to say I'm not, because I think Pittsburgh wins this game too.
Thank you.
Defense last year for Pittsburgh gave up, or they had the number 2 nationwide average in sacks. number 23 overall defense. Jurkovec is a nightmare of a quarterback to play against. And when Florida State played them the last couple of seasons, he was the only bright spot on a team that was just awful. And he's bound for the NFL. Pittsburgh has a way of doing this. They were the team to beat Clemson the only time they won their first national title in 2016. They were the team to beat Miami when they rolled into November with Mark Richt when they were undefeated. They're going to do it again. Florida State's going to come in hot. They're going to lose on the road to Pittsburgh. It's going to be a mixture of the defense getting to them. You don't even need to sack Jordan Travis. You need to get up in his face and get in the backfield quick enough to disrupt all of the timing. And mark my words, it will happen again. I'm glad you went first, Chris, because everyone would have thought you were copying me, but now we know it's heartfelt. And I'm not joking. Yeah. I think Pittsburgh legitimately wins this game.
When we get let me see what that line is after this, and whatever your favorite eatery is there in the Orlando area, we'll put some food on that, because I don't.
Okay.
So obviously I hope we're wrong, but we'll see. November 11th, Florida State hosts Miami, and I'll go ahead and start with this one. In years past, this has been a tough one, but when you trouse the Hurricanes like you did last season and they just can't seem to put a lot of stuff together, I think you can feel very comfortable going back home, beating Miami. It is your biggest home game of the season. I know Miami will be improved. It's later in the year. We've played Miami in November before. It's not going to be the beatdown it was last year, for a number of reasons. Probably trying not to go too hard before the end of the season. You have a weak opponent week after that. You got to save up for Florida, and you hopefully, if you haven't spoiled your spot in the ACC title game, you're looking forward to Clemson in 3 weeks. But the Miami game is where you lock up ACC play. I think you comfortably win. I think Miami comes out. May see get a little chippy here and there, but Miami just hasn't gotten it together yet. Maybe by November it'll be closer, but I'll say Florida State by 10.
I'm going to say Florida State by 10 touchdowns. I don't think this one's – this is not close. I think, again, coming off what I think is going to be a loss, I think that they take it out on Miami. Big rivalry game. You saw what happened last year. It's going to happen again.
Miami's getting a lot of national hype right now. I don't know if you guys watch a lot of 247 Sports and On 3, but a lot of prognosticators are picking Miami to have a really big bounce back year. You bring in Shannon Dawson, the offensive coordinator, obviously Tyler Van Dyke coming back, didn't transfer to Alabama, staying there in Coral Gables. And a lot of people are thinking the Miami Hurricanes have a really big bounce back year, maybe win 9 games. I don't know what a couple people I listened to today have them pretty easily sitting at 8. So this is a game that I would not be surprised at all to see Miami lose. And I don't think they're going to win. But just sort of that hype and the build-up, I'm personally not buying it. I personally don't see it. I think that Miami had a lot of holes to fill from last season, and I don't know that they did a good job of filling those. I mean, I hear what everybody's telling me, and I look at the depth chart. I know they have some talented dudes. They had some talented dudes last year. So was the issue all in the coordinators? Maybe, but I don't think it was that simple. So yeah, I don't like Miami to win this game at all. Maybe they keep it close, like maybe there's a revenge factor, and that is a rivalry game. Florida State and Miami, obviously the biggest rivalry game in state. I think both of you would probably agree with me, right? I mean, that's the biggest thing that they got going, and there's a lot of emotions on the line there, but I just think Florida State's a better team.
Yeah, by a lot.
Yeah, and maybe Miami will figure some things out. I mean, but we were joking about their poor schedule in September. I mean, do you even show up for that? So anyway, not much to talk about the next week. Florida State plays North Alabama. Pretty sure we played them before. I'm not totally sure, but this is one where you kind of put 42, 45 points up. You let some starters play. Now the defense may get after it. Generally, they late in the year kind of put some new guys in, and you've kind of got some fresh blood going. So you may even try to keep them to a single digits. So maybe 42-9 for the Noles.
Okay. Yeah, this is going to be a lot of backups. A lot of backups for them. I don't even think it's going to be close. I mean, the closest is going to be a 0-0 when it starts. That's it.
Yeah, nothing like scheduling a scrimmage there for your team to wrap up the season. A nice little way to kind of mosey on into your postseason play. So just kind of exactly what you guys said. So the teams will line up and there will be a ball kicked off.
Right.
It may even be cold, but that's the only thing to report there. We've already talked about Florida State, Florida. Just a reminder, I took Florida State to win that one. And you guys had who?
I had Florida. Sorry.
I had Florida State.
Okay.
And Jarad had Florida. The only thing that I think obviously it's at the end of the season, but look forward to is maybe it might be a game where FSU needs that win to get into the playoffs, or Florida needs that win to get bowl eligible. Like, that could really throw a wrinkle into it. But if it's just what I see on paper, I'm going to go Florida State.
Okay. Yeah, and so much of this really, I think, is just dependent on who Graham Mertz ends up being for the Florida. We touched on this at the beginning of it, but this Florida team is a big question mark, and I did pick them to win this game, and I think that's kind of me saying that I believe that Mertz can turn the corner there and have sort of a transfer sort of Cinderella story for him, but open to all debates there, and there's no guarantee that that's going to happen. So. Right. All in all, there's a lot of on one side of the state, there's a lot of question marks, right? In the middle of the state and up north, there doesn't seem to be very many question marks. And that's kind of where we're at right now.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep, very true. And you're right with Florida State. What are they facing up the following week? What how does that factor in? All valid points.
Yeah. All right, that's cool. Good job, guys. Good discussion there. Real quick, let's wrap up with just looking at the other teams around the state. Just give me a game or two that just kind of sticks out with the Hurricanes, Knights, or any other teams around the state that just kind of something that sticks out to you, an interesting game or two.
I actually kind of want to take this one just because it was something I mentioned, so I want to jump off here. But UCF schedule this year is crazy, right? And it's kind of one of my favorite schedules in the country because you're going to take a team that you haven't seen play a lot of games, and we really so number one, I'm looking forward to their trip to Norman, because anytime you take a team like from Orlando area and you stick them in Norman, like that's an interesting game to me.
Yeah.
The other part of their schedule that I really want to touch on is this weird. I don't know who's in charge of Central Florida or of UCF scheduling here, but they should be fired. And they have a really random weird stretch where they're going to go to Kansas, right? They're going to go to the state of Kansas to play a football game. They're going to come back to Orlando, and then they're going to turn around and go back to Kansas to play the state of Kansas to play another football game. That's the most absurd scheduling I've ever heard of in my lifetime. So I'm looking forward to seeing it.
The whole, I agree. The whole schedule's for them, just because there's so many matchups that they have not played, notable teams that they have not played. So that's going to be fun. For me, though, I mean, really, it really comes down to the matchup. First game of the season for the Hurricanes versus Miami of Ohio. Like, who is the real Miami? Like, we've been debating for years. I mean, I cannot tell you how many message boards I've been on where it's just like, no, this is the real Miami. No, that's the real Miami. And now we get to see on the field who is the real Miami. So after this, there is no Miami Hurricanes. There is no like, you win this game, you're Miami, and the other team is just the other Miami.
Settled.
I think they really should change their name. The loser should change their name. Jarad, isn't there a place in Texas called Miami?
Miami, Texas. It is 20 minutes south of my hometown.
Okay.
Yes.
There are no stoplights and like 800 people. So
the loser goes to Miami. That's what I should say.
I think they're called the Warriors. I think they're the Miami Warriors or something like that. So maybe the loser of that game could adopt that moniker too.
Yeah, I agree. What about you, Brandon? What sticks out?
Yeah, so with Jared's comment, UCF at Boise State is a week 2 game that maybe sneakily would grab some national attention. Boise State's probably the favorite to win the Mountain West. UCF's coming to a brand new conference. They played Boise State, I want to say either last year or year before, at home. in Oregon that was delayed forever, and it came down to the wire, and UCF pulls it out. So I think this could actually be a way for UCF to kind of set the tone for their season, because you don't know how it's going to match up in the Big 12, right? You're at Kansas State, as Jarad mentioned. You play the Wildcats, the defending Big 12 champs. You're at Norman. You have to go to Lawrence, Kansas to play the Jayhawks. You have to go to Texas Tech. All of these are just completely unknowns for this squad. And when you're building and you join a new conference, it's going to be just very, very different. So I'm kind of excited about that. Just a quick note, I'm not excited about this, but I am going to keep like a very, very distant eye on like the South Florida FIUs to see who ends up being the worst team in the state. Because the South Florida Bulls, it's pretty bad over there. It's pretty abysmal. They haven't like even won I forget the stat, like a road game or a home game or beaten a Division I team in like 3 years. I mean, they have like 3 wins over the last 3 seasons. It's pretty bad. So, like, that's kind of interesting to see how low they're going to distance themselves from the pack. But, yeah, I kind of like the Miami-Texas A&M game. I think that's more, for me personally, it's probably going to tell me more about the Aggies than it will the Hurricanes. But it's going to be an interesting one. I just hope it's higher scoring than last year. But I think looking at where Jimbo Fisher's coming back with a lot of injuries and a 5-win season, we're going to know a lot about the Aggies right then and there. So I'm kind of excited about that one.
Yeah, and Evan Stewart is a name that maybe a lot of people don't know if you don't watch a lot of Texas A&M football. But Evan Stewart's going to be, in my opinion, my prediction is he's going to be a household name in college football. I think he'll finish as like a top 3 or 5 wide receiver this season, and that's kind of my bold prediction. I mean, he is phenomenal, and he only a true freshman last year, but that's going to be a weapon down there in College Station.
Wasn't he like a 5-star number 1 receiver coming out of high school, something like that?
Yeah,
he was up there.
He's lived up to the billing, in my opinion.
Okay. Yeah, looking forward to seeing him. I think Florida was in the running for him, right? Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think we were down to like the top 3 or something for him.
Florida wanted to be in the running for him, and he did visit campus. He did visit a lot, right? And at the time, we had a quarterback that ended up at Oklahoma and transferred out of Oklahoma at the time, and they were really good buddies, both from down there in Texas. And Stewart spent a lot of time on campus, and gave him a run for our money. But at the end of the day, like Dan Mullen's not going to win that kind of recruiting battle.
Yeah, true, very true. Awesome, guys.
Wow. Well, maybe we'll take some final thoughts here, but that wraps it up. We've got the Gators. We're within 2 wins on what we think that's going to be there. Florida State, I think we're all in agreement with probably 2 losses if I count the numbers right. I don't know if we picked a win total in Miami. We all seem to be pretty down on them, and they didn't make a bowl game last year for the first time in 15 seasons. I don't have a lot of faith they'll do it this year, just to be truthful. And then UCF, we'll see. I think Vegas probably has them around 6-ish wins. I think the Big 12 is just going to beat each other up. So it's really going to be like the top tier echelon, Texas, Oklahoma, Kansas State, and then everybody else is like 7-5.
Okay. Yeah. I tend to agree.
That Texas schedule is so easy. Outside of that Bama game, that conference schedule for Texas is one of the easiest paths, I think, in all of the nation to the college football playoff. So
easier than Georgia?
Yes. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
In my opinion.
Okay.
Man, it's not bad. Obviously, you got to play the Red River rivalry, right? The Red River shootout. That's what we say, because we're traditionalists around here. So you got to play the shootout. Norman, and I have Oklahoma as a sleeper team, but not a lot of people do. So outside of that game, I mean, Texas is. It's not a bad road.
Okay.
Yeah. I think I'm going to pick Texas to win the Big 12. Just a side note, but you're right with Oklahoma. I mean, have they really even had a bad coaching hire in the last 50 years? Like, no joke. Like, they have a losing record for the first time since the 70s last year. It's just unheard of there. They have all kinds of success, and they'll bounce back for sure.
I guess my final question is, if you had to pick right now, gentlemen, who's in the playoff?
Ooh.
Love it.
I haven't thought too much about this. Let's see. I would say Georgia because, I mean, they're going to be undefeated going into the SEC championship game. They might lose to Bama. and still get it. So Bama, Georgia, Ohio State, and then I don't know who the last one. I don't know. I don't think Michigan's going to get there. For fun, we'll say Clemson. For fun.
Give me Georgia and Bama, with Bama winning the SEC. I know I'm crazy here. I think in the last season of its existence, Pac-12 sends someone and USC goes. And Ohio State.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you on there. I think I'm gonna go with Alabama. I'm gonna go unpopular here though, because I'm not gonna pick Georgia to go too. I think Alabama, Ohio State. I'm gonna pick another team from the Pac-12 to be different, but it's not gonna be USC. It's gonna be Utah, and I'm gonna go a little crazy here, and I'm gonna say Texas.
Texas, okay. It's fun.
Utah's crazy. Texas is not.
Utah is crazy, but I got to be different. I would have picked, honestly, I would have picked Clemson, but I think Florida State wins the ACC. I think they lose to Clemson first time, they lose to Florida, which keeps them out of the playoff, but they beat Clemson and win the ACC to keep Clemson out of the playoff.
I really could see that scenario too. I really could.
I'm with you with Florida State losing 2 games this year and winning the ACC. We differ on which ones, but yeah, I don't think Florida State's quite there yet. And they're a trendy pick to get up there. If things fall right and no injuries, you get everything humming along and you get a little bit lucky. I also wonder if you get in with one loss, because if you do lose one game, it's in September. But I just don't think they're quite there yet.
I want to write these down and see how off we are.
Well, if you look at it, some random teams made it, right? You had your you had your TCU last year, so I think
I love how TCU is pretty much going to be unranked this year after going to the title game, and nobody even talked about them in the Big 12. It's wonderful.
Yeah,
that's the way it happens sometimes.
Yeah, you're right though. Wasn't Cincinnati popped in there once? So there's always that one. So yeah, why not Utah?
Indeed. Okay. Any final thoughts, gentlemen, on the 2023 season?
I'm just ready. I'm ready to go.
Yeah. T-minus, let's go. Let's kick it off. Let's launch the shuttle. Let's, pass out the ammunition here. Let's go to war.
Yeah. All that stuff.
Fantastic. Well, we're going to go ahead and wrap up our season preview here. And our next episode, you'll hear us talking about week 1 and what is entailed for us there. So any final thoughts before Chris sends us off to tell fans how they can reach out to us?
No, man, we're ready. Do go to FloridaFocusPodcast.com for all your Florida Focus podcast needs.
Yes, indeed. Okay, well, fans, thanks for listening. This is Brandon saying go Noles.
This is Chris.
And Jarad.
Go Gators.